All right, the time is now 6 o'clock. I'll call tonight's meeting to order. Roll call has been taken, and we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you for that. Next up is to review, revise, and approve tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written? Moved by Vice Chair Gare, second by Vice Chair Walker-Andrews. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda as written, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. Next up are to approve the minutes. First up is for the Superintendent, Cabinet, and Board of Trustees retreat, September 4th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Trustee Wake, second by Trustee Walsh. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor for approving the September 4th minutes, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. Next up are the regular board meeting minutes of September 9th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Trustee Wake, second by Vice Chair Garris. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor for approving the regular board meeting minutes, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. Thank you for that. Next up is item 5, which is the school connection. And this is a new part of our regular board meeting minutes, our meetings that we will have. And first up is Washington Middle School. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Hill.
Yes, thank you. We are excited to have Mr. Palmer, the principal of Washington Middle School, here tonight with some staff and students to share a little bit about Washington Middle School for our community, or our, I won't say community connection, but our school connection. And as Chair Old Person said, this is a new component to our meetings that we'll be doing every meeting, and we're excited to hear what they have to say.
Thank you very much for having us here.
Can we use a mic? You don't have to use it, just turn it on so that we can catch the audio. Yep, thank you.
Thank you again for having me here. Really excited to come and celebrate Washington Middle School. Start with just some facts. Our enrollment is at 680 students this year. We have 70 staff members between certified and classified. This fall we have all sorts of extracurriculars going on: cross country, we have MCPS, robotics, volleyball, soccer, student council, ambassadors, math counts, quiz bowls, and over 65% of our Washington students are involved in some sort of Washington extracurricular this fall. So that was really cool. Some of the things we've been working on with our staff at Washington is going over this profile of the graduate and really trying to look at the things that we already do as teachers and the ways that we can apply these traits to our students and ways that we can teach these to our students. And so we've been really trying to hit on this. And one way we've done that is we've kind of rebranded some of our student celebrations. And so we have our Washington Outstanding Wildcats, and we've tried to tie some of those character strengths that go along with those skills on the profile of the graduate to the character strengths we are looking for every month in students. And so teachers nominate kids, and we celebrate them on Friday with a drawing and t-shirts and that. And so just another good way for us to tie that into our school. Our yearbook class, so before 3 years ago, our yearbook class was just kind of a club after school, and then last year it upgraded, or 3 years ago we upgraded it. Now it's a full class for 8th grade students, and we actually won an award for that. We had a hardback 136-page yearbook, and they won the Gallery of Excellence for the yearbook cover last year. So it's really a growing class. It's application process to get into, but it's really a popular class among our 8th grade students. So excited to celebrate that. Lifetime Fitness. This is one of our exploratory classes for 7th graders, and it's just really trying to show those kids how to start a healthy lifestyle. So every quarter it rotates, but again, this is one that students are kind of knocking down the door, trying to get into Lifetime Fitness, and really neat class that we've been able to add to our exploratory rotation just to help get kids moving and active during the day and get some of that energy out. We got a new kiln this year, so we're really excited about that. We got a grant, and then the PTA contributed money as well. And of according to my art teacher, if this one lasts as long as the last one, it'll serve 21,000 students while at Washington, so we're very thankful to have that kiln. She told me it'll be fired up next week probably, because ceramics is just starting. Our PLTW classes, so we offer 2 options in each grade level. We have Intro to Engineering and Computer Science for Innovators and Makers in 6th, Design and Modeling and Med Detectives in 7th, Robotics, App Creators in 8th, and then we're working on Business Applications and offer Energy and Environment in 8th, and then Green Architecture. And so there in 6th grade, you can see they were designing a playground that is accessible for all students, and they do these out of cardboard. They're really neat. 6th grade for our comp science, they provide feedback to another student. They made Tamagotchis, so they code those, and they give responses to each kid when they click the buttons, and they can ask them questions. It's really neat. In our Med Detectives class, they actually get actual sheep brains and have to look through those, and they are trying to decipher whether they have a sheep brain that has a certain disease. 8th grade app creators, they get on computers and actually make apps for an iPad. So they have iPads that links to the course, and they're actually creating different apps in that course. Design and modeling, they're launching today. Where are we launching today? Skimmers and different planes down the highway or the hallway, and figuring out whatever types of aerodynamics work best. And then 8th grade robotics students make different types of robots. So pretty exciting. 7th grade, we do passion projects every year, and so this gives students just a chance to kind of investigate and research a topic that's anything they want. There's really no limits, just something they're interested in. And then we do a big showcase every year in the spring for parents and community members, and it's really exciting to see our chef there made beef Wellington, which was incredible. We have the doghouse that was made, building trails. It's just really fun to see the things that they're truly passionate about, and then watch them put that passion and desire into it, and how much work they're willing to put in when they find something that drives them. So really fun thing they do in 7th grade. And then they also do trout in the classroom. And this started last year. We had 1 tank and about 100 eggs, and I want to say we released roughly 50 fish in the spring. And this year we're going to have 2 tanks, so each 7th grade classroom will have a tank, and they'll start with about 100 to 200 eggs, and they raise them from egg in the classroom all the way to release in the spring when they're about 2-inch long minnows, give or take. And it was really neat because the Trout Unlimited company met them at the release site. They learned how to fly fish, they learned about insects and how to properly catch and release fish and different types of nets. It was just a really neat experience for all of them, and to see that life cycle of the fish and all that. So really fun thing they do in 7th grade. Last year in 8th grade, we started a science fair, and this was the first science fair in my 5 years at Washington. Maybe they had it before, but it was really neat to see all those students. It kind of goes back to the passion projects, to pick something that they were interested in and see the really nice outcome of projects that they came up with. And we even had a few receive awards at the U of M, so we're excited to continue that this year. 6th grade pulled back from the overnight trip and started their Washington outdoor adventure. Kind of similar to that 7th grade Trout in the Classroom, just a chance for our kids to get out and experience Montana and see the different types of jobs and different things that we have to offer that gives students a chance to be out in nature. Again, over 200 of our 6th graders took a bunch of parent volunteers, but they all went out there and learned about archery, survival, team building, so it's a really neat experience that we'll continue again this spring with our 6th grade classes. And then we have our robotics group. So 3 years ago in robotics, we only had 10 students and 1 Washington Middle School team, and Alec Arnson, their sponsor, has taken upon himself that he wanted more kids involved and more opportunities for these kids. So we are now up to 9 teams, excuse me, and 60 students participating. So it went from 10 teams and 1 coach all the way to that. Last year, our Robo Sapiens actually won an award at Nationals in Massachusetts for their innovation project. So it's just something at Washington that I think is really unique and really growing thanks to the hard work of Mr. Armstrong. So it's a really cool group. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mackey. She's going to talk a little bit about the Happiness Project and what that looks like at Washington.
I am Dana Mackey, counselor at Washington. Thanks for letting us be here. So in Montana and hopefully many other states across the nation, we're mandated to do suicide prevention programs, and we have been doing that for a long time, and we always felt that it's a little wanting, like there's something else that we ought to be addressing with the kids and teaching the kids. And so the Montana Happiness Project is a project that was at first housed at Families First, and now it has moved to this new center called the Center for Advancement of Positive Education. It's at the university in the College of Education, with John Flanagan and Dylan Wright and some names that you might recognize. Anyway, they've absorbed Montana Happiness Project, and I'm not sure if they're still going to call it that, but we have paired Montana Happiness Project with our SOS, Signs of Suicide curriculum, and in addition to teaching kids signs of suicide and what to do if they're worried about themselves or another student, like what is on the opposite side of that, which is some more positive psychology. Instead of looking at like deficits or what's wrong with you, what are your strengths and what are you in control of? And so we introduce positive psychology interventions, and if you wanted to go to the next slide, I'm going to introduce you to a positive psychology intervention called the 3-step emotional change trick. And this is one of John Flanagan's gems. So the first step, and all of the kids are taught this, and we actually have differentiation between all 3 grade levels with the Montana Happiness Project. They get a big group presentation for grade level, and then they also have a classroom lesson, so they're getting this information twice, and it's different for each grade level, so they're not repeating it year after year. So anyway, back to the 3-step emotional change trick. Feel the feeling is just accepting the feeling. And this isn't necessarily like when you're frustrated with math or whatever, you need to move through it and the feeling's fine. It's kind of like when you're stuck with a feeling. And it's the antidote for somebody telling you to cheer up. Because oftentimes when someone just tells you to cheer up, you have the opposite of that. Like it's not going to cheer you up. You're going to be like, I'm feeling the mood that I'm in. There's a reason for it. So when you're stuck in that feeling, accept the feeling is the first step. And then once your brain calms down, you go into thinking mode a little bit better. You can think a new thought or something different. Like you go outside and go walk. It could be watch a movie. It could be tell a joke. It could be going out with a friend. It could be writing. And then once your brain has moved a little bit and released itself from the emotional grasp of that difficult emotion, you then can spread to good mood. And that happens like by doing something kind for somebody. So all of a sudden you're released from your bad mood, you're in a more positive space. And then you reinforce that by doing something kind for somebody, listening to a friend who's in need, or lending a hand, or buying somebody a cup of coffee. And there's actually a 4th step, and it's to teach somebody else the trick. He says it's the 4th step, even though he's calling it a 3-step emotional change trick, because emotions are complicated and surprising, and why not throw a 4th step into something that's called 3 steps? And if John Flanagan is, observing tonight, then hopefully I did it well. Thank you.
All right, and now our BPA group would like to kind of share with you what BPA is all about at Washington.
Do you introduce yourselves?
I'm Amelia Moriarty.
I'm Maya Clayton. And I'm Lucy Moriarty.
I'm Aneska Elam.
We've all been in BPA for the last 3 years
Yeah.
as 8th graders. And BPA is Business Professionals of America, and it's a student-run club that develops and empowers student leaders to discover their passions in business.
At Washington, students run a school store, which is the Snack Shack. We create projects and learn skills for competition and are involved in community service by helping raise funds for Montana Special Olympics. Last year, we were able to donate $600 to the Special Olympics through donut sales.
BPA competes in a various number of competitions, and students can really choose what they're interested in. I know personally, we've done animation and game design, and we have seen our creativity really shine through those. and you learn how to work together as a team really well.
So we began at regional level, which is in Missoula at the college, and that's top 5 to top 10 projects in each competition move on to states. And then we go to states, which is March 8th to 10th this year in Billings, and that's testing. So there's options of tests you can do, so top 5 in tests, and then top 3 judged events move on to nationals. For both me, Amelia, and Maya's last 3 years, we've all moved on to nationals for our main judged events. And then nationals this year is in Nashville. Last year it was in Florida. And so that's where we do our final competitions, yeah.
So we were on a team last year that got best in show in our animation. We had another person, but she wasn't able to come tonight. Do you want to share a little bit about your?
Oh, yeah. Well, as a team, we worked together to figure out problems, and there were multiple other teams. Last year we had 40 to 60 kids sign up, and this year we have 80 that might sign up. So we'll all be working together and figuring out stuff. And last year a lot of people did, there was video production team, digital game design, business fundamental concepts, extemporaneous speech, digital citizenship, promotional photography, cybersecurity, website design team, and multiple other things, which we all learn, and it helps us develop different skills in the real world. And yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to say one more thing. They kind of underplayed their best in show. That is a presentation where you are in a conference room and you are competing against secondary and high school students. And the judges walk around and look at your final product, and you need to answer questions. And they won best of show in their division, beating all of those older kids out. So pretty amazing.
Thank you all. I don't know if anyone.
Yep. Any questions from a trustee?
I'm in there somewhere. Yeah, I'm in there.
All right.
Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate you having us.
Thank you. Next up is item 6, which is public comment. Public comment portion of, excuse me, I'm getting over something. I'm sure we all have kids bringing something home. The public comment portion of the meeting is set aside for the public to address the board as a body. It is not time for board response or for the public to ask. Do not infringe on the right of privacy of others. Please sign in and spell your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The chair or acting chair may interrupt or terminate an individual speaker if the statements are out of order, over 3 minutes, are personally directed to an individual. Any public comment?
Yes, we do have public comment. Stephen Bennett.
Can you turn the mic on and then sign in as well? Yep.
Testing.
Steve, you can have a seat at the chair.
Have a seat here. Sure. All right. Thank you very much. I'll just go ahead and read a statement here. I actually already sent this into the public comments, and so most of you are aware of it. But I'm speaking to report large-scale failures within MCPS to comply with Montana Code annotated 20-7-133 regarding the required reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in schools with exemptions for students and staff. Mind you, MCPS is not the only district with such large-scale failures, and I had contacted the Montana OPI recently to report this law, and it reported on this law in its weekly newsletter on February 14th, 2025. It was towards the end of that newsletter, so some people might have missed it, but here's what the Montana law states. It's cited, Pledge of Allegiance required exemptions for students and teachers, except as provided in subsection 4 of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America must be recited in all public schools of the state and may be followed by a moment of silence. The recitation required in subsection 1 must be conducted at the beginning of the first class of each school day in kindergarten through grade 12. The recitation must be conducted by each individual classroom teacher or the teacher's surrogate, or B, over the school intercom system by a faculty member or person designated by the principal. A school district shall inform all students and teachers of their right not to participate in the recitation of the pledge. Any student or teacher who, for any reason, objects to participating in the Pledge of Allegiance may exercise this right must be excused from the participation. A student or teacher who declines to participate in the pledge may engage in any alternative form of conduct so long as that conduct does not materially or substantially disrupt the work of or the discipline of the school. And if a student or teacher declines to participate in the recitation of the pledge pursuant to this section, the school district may not, for evaluation purposes, include any reference to students or teachers not participating. Now, I'm a guest teacher, right? So I teach at many different schools, almost all the schools around here in Missoula County. I've taken to a practice of, during the first period, I actually put this law up on the smartboard, right? So the students read it, right? They understand these are their rights. Like if a staff member chooses not to say the Pledge of Allegiance, if a student chooses not to say the Pledge of Allegiance, they should never feel any peer pressure to say it or to not say it, right? This is very important because, you know, to pledge allegiance to something is not truly allegiance if it's somehow pressured, right? If it's somehow put upon you or punishable for any kind. And there's a Supreme Court case, West Virginia State Board of Education.
That's 3 minutes. So sorry, we do 3 minutes.
May I put in a motion to request one of the board members allow me some more time to speak?
No, sorry, you are limited to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other public comments? None? Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, which are announcements from superintendent. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Hill.
Use my speaker. Good afternoon. It's been a long day. Couple of announcements for you. Wednesday, October 15th is our bison harvest. Our Native American Student Services group is putting that on again this year out at the Ag Center, and that'll be from about approximately 10 to 2 o'clock. So we're excited to be doing that. Our next board meeting, October 14th, will be at Sealy Swan High School in Sealy, Montana. Just wanted to make trustees aware of that in case it wasn't on your calendar or your radar, just to start planning ahead. We're also set to hear a presentation from Bridged Health Alliance, not you guys, but some of our team, our teachers and staff who are associated with our health insurance committee. But Bridged Health Alliance is the state group that was trying to set up a trust for a statewide pooled health insurance. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about that. Last week, I got to attend the Crosstown Girls Flag Football contest. It was awesome to see so many kids participating and involved, not just the people that were playing the football, but also the cheer team and dance teams. It was quite an event, and so congratulations to our schools for pulling that off. Last 2 days have been in Bozeman. We attended a fall administration conference put on by School Administrators in Montana. Had some highlights from that, including some research that presented the cost of conflict in K-12 education, which was a really interesting review of the actual costs that school districts incur relative to conflict around policies, state laws, just different things. Culture war type stuff. There was also a research that was presented on superintendent turnover nationwide and in Montana. Some interesting facts for Montana. We have the 3rd highest turnover rate behind Alaska and Utah for superintendent turnover. 74% of Montana school districts have replaced their superintendents in the last 5 years, and 27% just last year alone. So it was a really interesting and germane topic to the superintendents who were in the room, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? So that was great. We also had a really interesting presentation by the Chief Economic Officer for the state of Montana on educator workforce. Some key takeaways from that were that of all the industries and workforce metrics that are monitored by the Department of Labor, education was the only workforce that saw real wage losses from 2018 to 2024. In 2024, we had over 1,000 vacant teaching positions across Montana. The state graduates of roughly 750 teachers a year, and we only retain about 500 of them, according to their statistics. The rest are seeking positions outside of the state. So even if we graduate 500 a year and there's 1,000+ jobs available, we're just not seeing where we're addressing that critical need and shortage in Montana. The average salary for Montana teachers rose about 2% a year from 2017-18 till 23-24, and when adjusted for inflation, the net result in real wage loss of 1.7% over that same time. During that window, the average Montana worker experienced real wage growth of 1.8%. So, and when you adjust for where we live, cost of living, those kind of things become really critical. For the western region of Montana, which would include Missoula, the average wage growth was 5.8% during that time, and the average across Montana was 2%. So when you look at western Montana in particular, it's pretty significant. There were lots of other interesting data points as well, but the general idea is that the STARS Act, which recently passed, was really put in play because of this report initially, and to try and make up for lost wages experienced by Montana teachers, our support staff, and our administration. So. We also got some great legal updates from Sam regarding just some of our most recent laws that were passed and how they're impacting Montana, but also the Interim Education Commission that's looking at studying state funding for Montana was also part of that. And then we had some legislative updates from the National Superintendent's Organization, which was a lot of information and a lot of questions and no real answers about what's going to happen here in the near future. But yeah, so that was pretty much my report.
All right, thank you. Next up is item 8, which is the consent agenda. There is no board discussion for consent agenda items, as these are routine items. We'll have 2 motions, an elementary and a high school. Is there an elementary motion to approve the consent agenda items? Moved by Vice Chair Garris. Second by Trustee Mercer. There is no board discussion. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all elementary trustees in favor of approving the consent agenda items, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all elementary trustees present. Next up, is there a high school motion to approve the high school consent agenda items? Moved by Vice Chair Walker-Andrews, seconded by Trustee Davy. There is no board discussion. There any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor for approving the high school consent agenda item, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present, minus Trustee Wake, as she's out right now. So item 9 is new business, and it's to approve the out-of-country travel request, and this is over to Assistant Superintendent Shattuck.
Hello. Dan Lockridge was actually hoping to be here to present this, but he's coaching in a crosstown soccer game right now. So in spring break of 2027, they are traveling to Spain, his AP Spanish course. And it's a 10-day long trip, and he's hoping that you guys can approve this.
Any questions from a trustee? Trustee Witcher.
If we change the date of spring break again next year, is the principal prepared or the trip organizer prepared to deal with that?
Yes, it looks like 1 to 2 days, school days are impacted right now, so I'm assuming that they'll just have to work it out.
Any other trustee questions? Seeing none, is there a motion from a high school trustee to approve the recommendation? Moved by Trustee Davy, second by Vice Chair Garris. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, all those in favor for approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. All right, next up is item 9, which is Board of Trustees. First up is, we'll pass it over to Vice Chair Walker Andrews, and this is information only, and she can discuss what the topic is.
Should I look? No, I simply wanted to bring people up to date on 2 items. One is to remind you that the MCEL conference is October 16 and 17 in Helena. It also is possible to do it online, so if people want to participate in that. There are a couple resolutions that will come up in front of MCEL, one from us and one from Bozeman that I know of. So you might want to look at those. The other is just to say where I was recently. So MTSBA each year sends people to Washington, D.C. to talk to our congressional representatives. So we had someone from Billings, Cascade, Columbia Falls, East Helena, Missoula, and Stevensville. And we did talk to Daines, Downing, Sheehy, and Zinke's senior staff member. And the topics that we focused on was the need for more funding for career training, welding, things of that sort. E-rate, which isn't as critical perhaps to us, but many of the more rural schools in our state use the hotspots and Wi-Fi on buses to help students that may travel an hour each way. That way they have access only, of course, to the school system, but to look at homework, catch up on things of that sort. And so that was another item we brought up to those individuals. My job primarily was to talk about the teacher shortage, and I gave them the numbers on the number of graduates and the number of openings, and of course the issues with pay and housing for our teachers. And then finally, local control. There were many, many other things we could have talked about, but that's what we focused on. I wouldn't say that we had very nice meetings. I wouldn't say it seemed to make any difference on the votes that very next day on budgets, but we try. So that was just an information item.
Any questions for Arlene? Seeing none, any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, now on to topic 8, or B, which is Upper 7 Law funding. And I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Mr. Holliday. If you wanna go ahead and come up and sit at that table and turn your mic on, and then you can start your presentation.
Good evening. Andres Halliday, Upper 7 Law in Helena, Montana. I had a chance to talk with a number of you about 2 months ago, but we've been meeting with school districts, superintendents, parents, stakeholders in public education throughout Montana for now going on over a year to see if there is interest in and to ask school boards to join in a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of Montana's school funding system. Would you like me to kind of run through some of the topics we discussed previously?
Yes, please, because this is the presentation open part for the public to see.
Sure. I'm going to try to give a high level, and I'll try not to get wonky. Stop me, though, please, if you have any questions. Apologies to those of you who've heard this before. So Montana school funding, right, you've got the requirement in the Montana Constitutional that guarantees everyone the right to a free, quality public education. I'm generalizing with that nutshell. It's been challenged twice. That's gone to the Montana Supreme Court, once with Helena Elementary back in the 1980s, again with the Columbia Falls lawsuit in 2002 to 2005, wrapped up in about 2008. Coming out of all of that was what is functionally today's funding system with some tweaks over about the last 17 years. And what came out of Columbia Falls was a determination that the legislature had to define what constituted a quality education, and the state had to provide funding for that quality education in an equitable manner, and that leaves you all with generally the funding system you have today. If you're familiar with base levels, max levels, I think I was noticing y'all's budget is at 100%, I believe, on max. One of the things that was noted by the district court in Columbia Falls is that as we see more and more districts approaching max, flirting with max, I was talking to a district earlier this month that stays right at max or over max because they continue to decrease, and so they're able to bump above max as they slide down in enrollment. So the components of a quality education, right? So first you've got your questions of, let's stop for a second. With the components of the quality education, the state of Montana is supposed to make a determination of the costs that are required to actually fund those components, and then is supposed to actually come up with the funding mechanism by which to funnel that money to the school districts. So there's 8 components in there. The first being curriculum, and that's going to be essentially the meat and potatoes of your actual presentation to your students. It's also going to be anything that's pushed out to you by OPI, right? And so there are some loose parameters in some cases as to what even constitutes a curriculum. As we've been traveling the state, Upper 7 also does a constitutional roadshow, and we see wide disparities of what public schools are teaching across the state because of loose interpretations of what constitutes curriculum. Also, talking to superintendents throughout the state, when you're stuck within a base budget, when you're maxed out, when you don't have any additional funds, the first thing that has been represented to me that gets thrown overboard is curriculum. Because if you've already got materials, if you've already got if you're using technology to present your materials baked in, if you've already trained your teachers, then you're not going to expend the additional funds if that's the thing that you can cut for yet another year. We see districts that simply don't have curriculum materials for certain grade levels. They're using materials they can find online, and their teachers are scrimping and scrounging to make sure that they can continue to provide an education for those students. Example of costs incurred that districts don't, that aren't funded by the legislature, right? Might hear the term unfunded mandate thrown around from time to time, but with new math curriculum that's coming online next year, OPI estimated that was going to cost approximately $30 million to roll out, either between schools obtaining the materials or training for the teachers. The legislature this session budgeted $0 ultimately for districts to do anything necessary in order to provide those materials. I shouldn't say that. The legislature did pass a $5 million bill. The governor vetoed it at the new OPI superintendent's insistence. Let me get out my cheat sheet here. The second category is students with special needs. Generally, that means your students with disabilities, at-risk students, limited English proficiency, and gifted and talented. Generally, all of these categories are underfunded. Special ed, if you look at, special ed we know is underfunded. It's been underfunded since Columbia Falls. Back in 2005, it was underfunded again when the state analyzed school funding in 2015. It continues to be underfunded today. The state has a great amount of data. It has a really nifty district by district general fund analyzer. You can see your 5 fully funded components. You can see special ed. Basically every district in the state is underwater when it comes to providing special education because it's not, because there isn't a one-to-one cost analysis. I'm only talking about this from the standpoint of general fund dollars provided by the state. So if you're engaging in a permissive tuition levy, that's different. You are going to be able to then backfill those dollars, but that gets us back into equity problems that the state has experienced or districts experience over time. Some districts are fortunate enough to be able to run permissive levies, ask their taxpayers, know that their taxpayers can assist with that. Some districts do not, cannot, and that could be because their taxpayers simply can't bear it. The Board of Trustees is uncomfortable running that or putting that permissive levy out there. So we know special education continues to be in a critical state in the state. At-risk students, limited English proficiency, gifted and talented, all are pretty much, I should say, at-risk students comes with a dollar amount provided by the state. It's unclear where the state gets that money from. One of the concerns in the prior litigation was that a lot of these numbers and expenditures by the state appear to be sort of plucked out of thin air, and then either a multiplier is run against them, or you run some sort of you run your CPIU, right? You look at inflation and you say, this is the amount that we're going to increase this number. It's not cost-based again, right? There's no study as to those numbers. Limited English proficiency, no money from the state whatsoever. And gifted and talented is only on a grant program, so if your school doesn't have the funds to run, most of the larger districts are fortunate enough to have money to put into that in a significant amount comparative to what's received from the state. I think all the AA's put in multiples. I think the superintendent could probably confirm compared to the small amounts that come back. All of this information, by the way, in terms of the either non-funding or underfunding, is largely derived from the state's data. If you're following along any of the interim budget or in interim funding committee meetings, there's a great cheat sheet that actually runs through all of these 8 categories where the state lays out either where it's just not providing the funding at all, or they do the best they can to come up with the dollars that they can show that they actually are providing, which is reflective in how underfunded things are, in that they are sort of desperately trying to say, well, at least we've got a grant program for things like gifted and talented. And gifted and talented is another one that is required, at least by statute, for curriculum purposes. Many districts simply don't have it. American Indian education content, we're not as focused on that one in what we're looking at in our lawsuit, because there is a secondary lawsuit that's been going on for a number of years related to Indian education for all. But that's not to say that it's not a problem. And in that case, I believe the Board of Public Education agreed to sort of an ongoing monitoring because of historic problems with regard to the provision of that and the determining whether or not school districts were properly using funds that were provided. Qualified and affected teachers, administrators, and qualified staff. I was glad to hear Superintendent Hill's comments on the teacher numbers and the real wages. I don't know if those were the numbers from, those were probably the numbers from about a year ago, I think. Yeah, because they didn't sound different, but it's a problem, and that report is fantastic information. It's not fantastic in a subjective sense for your teachers, but it provides an incredible amount of information of the problems that teachers face throughout this entire state. It's not just the western section of the state in terms of being able to afford houses, stay in the state, how many have to have secondary jobs, and it's wildly outpaces any other industry in the state. Yes, the state made took some actions this session, specifically the STARS Act. My subjective take on it, you'd probably need a STARS Act-esque investment every year for the next 10 years to even start trying to get to baseline on compensating your teachers for the jobs they do, and not just your teachers, right? This provision, we always talk about the teachers because they are the frontline folks, but right, we are also talking about your counselors, people providing mental health services. You're talking about your superintendents, and I know they get run through the ringer from time to time, but you need your qualified administrative staff as well, and your paras, and paras are just a critical missing group throughout this state, or at least districts run shortchanged on them. Facilities and distance learning technologies to meet accreditation standards. When this law was passed back in 2005, 2007, we were in a different world when it came to technology than we sit today. Right, computers are textbooks at this point. I don't even pretend to totally understand what you have to do in terms of software licenses and security patches and all of the other pieces that come along with hardware. The schools in this state, smaller schools, you try to plug in a We talked to a gentleman who used to do technology over about 10 years, school districts up and down western Montana, who would talk about going and plugging in a cart of Chromebooks in Eureka and blowing all the fuses, right? Because you're not prepared for the load that you're asking these old buildings to take. So it's such an interesting piece that you put facilities and learning technologies sort of shoved into this almost afterthought piece where technology is the bread and butter of what we're doing in the classroom these days, and also what we're expecting people. I mean, we are so interconnected now. You're probably dealing with just all of your students wandering around with smartphones constantly, or trying to deal with all of those pieces. But how we even just navigate being responsible citizens with technology. Facilities might be the biggest overall piece, at least for the state, in a 10,000-foot view level. Last I had heard, the estimate is that there's about $1.5 billion in bonded infrastructure projects by school districts around the state, and then the districts are debt servicing on those projects. That number doesn't take into account the districts that won't put out bonds and the districts that can't pass bonds, right, that have tried 5 times over the last decade and continue to live with the facilities that they have, right? And I think you heard me say this before, those of you who have been here, but what that means is we are telling students that they get their education based on the zip code they're born into. Because if they don't have the money, if their community can't afford it, if their community won't afford it, they just have to live with it. The state last did a study of what it would cost, right, to either bring up capital repairs to buildings or to actually replace buildings that are in dire need of replacement back in 2008, and since then there hasn't been a look of what that would be. That those costs were somewhere between $360 million and $400 million in 2008. Obviously, some of that has been moved off the ledger by successful passages, and a significant amount of new aging facilities has come on. And also, stuff's more expensive today. Just in Helena recently, we successfully passed, I believe, a $240 million bond for high schools and a $40 million bond for elementary schools. And a lot of flack came back at the board because the East Helena School District had built a high school for somewhere in the range of $24 to $30 million. And that's true. That was the legit number like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just size-wise also a different scale. But that's where construction has moved things today in terms of constructing the facilities. I'd say from a funding standpoint, facilities is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits. The state provides some level of debt service assistance on the back end once you've actually passed your bond, but there's no assistance on that front end piece if you need to rebuild that entire facility up front. There is major maintenance aid. You've got your school reserve levies. The major maintenance aid that was passed this session, I believe, ups Missoula's number to 45,000 a year in discretionary use money. Obviously, if you burn that all in one go with some big project, then you're not going to have access to that money for the entire length of the time if you bond that money forward, right? You put together a package so you can spend $1 million, but then that's the end of that money unless the legislature continues to increase that cap. I would assume most of your facilities people would probably say you need 4 times that amount of money on an ongoing annual basis to really be taking care of a lot of just the ongoing major maintenance needs you have in your facilities. Transportation, little ones, but not little, right? That the difficulty in state law where your transportation is limited from the location where you're pick up to the school and back. And so you end up in situations where you can't take students on a field trip under the state's definition of transportation at times, or to sporting events. We see schools around the state charging transportation fees. I don't know if you all do, right? But if you charge a flat transportation fee to anyone who wants to participate in an extracurricular activity or anyone who wants to go on a field trip, you start putting costs on what's supposed to be a free public education in ways that are can become cost prohibitive for some of our most vulnerable students. And I should say the same thing with technology. In districts that have been unable to pass technology levies, the same idea. Everyone gets to pay $50 at the beginning of the year for the pleasure of being able to access the school's technology, which can be an incredible hit on some families. Procedure to assess and track student achievement, I don't have a lot to say on that one. Preservation of local control, I appreciated the comments on local control earlier. The Montana Supreme Court said, and I believe Columbia Falls, but it could have been Helena, so don't hold me to it, that if you starve districts of funds, ultimately you deprive them of local control, because if a district can't actually make decisions because everything is based on cost constraints or simply the status quo of just what you can barely do, there is no semblance of local control. You're sort of just going through the motions. Where I think we've seen that manifest, well, we see it from districts cutting programs, right? We've seen if you have a STEM program and that's not required in your curriculum, districts cut it. In Helena, recently, if they didn't close a school, they were going to cut phys ed and art, I believe, across the district because of where they could move people and save money, right? Those aren't choices being made. People aren't coming in and having public comment and weighing the pros and cons of an art program or a phys ed program and people saying, well, that's just where we want to go, right? That is just being forced into it because you have no other choice. The other places that it's been coming up are 4-day school weeks we see with a lot of smaller districts. And often when you see the discussions of why those districts went to 4-day weeks, they cite things like cost constraints. That on paper, it looks like, at least up front, it's going to be cheaper. Now, maybe that's better for them, and maybe that's better for their community. There are some that say they can attract quality educators with that option of a 4-day week and a 3-day off, and that's fantastic for them if that's what works for them. But if they can't make that decision based on the objective ability to look at their budgets and say this works for us, this doesn't work for us, then they're backing into it in a way that's depriving those districts of local control. The last one would probably be consolidation. That comes up a lot of whether a district just has to say we have to consolidate into another district. Last thing I want to touch on quickly is, as you all know, or I think you all know, the interim school funding committee is ongoing with its meetings, continues to have its road show. I don't know if they're coming through Missoula. I didn't see a Missoula stop. I think there were some. Are they done? Yeah, I think there were some intentional choices there. But if you're not following along, it's It's a lot of great information, and I'd say every time legislative services staff provide a presentation, a handout, it just continues to drive home the point that under the existing model, it does not appear that the state of Montana is complying with its constitutional obligation to adequately fund public schools. We think now is the appropriate time to get involved here. The committee will be sort of wrapping up its sort of subcommittee work. They've done this kind of odd thing where they've got a committee and then a subcommittee of the committee that's basically the committee. But in theory, it will be wrapping up its work. It should be getting some sort of report from its contractor. There's even discussions of actually doing a true cost study, although that's actually still not necessarily a guarantee, which is, again, somewhat wild if we go back to the funding statute, which says the state is supposed to be doing these funding assessments regularly, and there have been none done, or the last one with facilities in 2008. So the fact that they would even be just talking about should we even bother doing this sort of tells you the precarious state we're in. When you juxtapose that with someplace like Wyoming, and I'm not saying we want to be Wyoming in terms of funding, Wyoming follows often like a 2-year schedule with looking at certain costs, at least in terms of facilities, and even Wyoming recently, and it's on appeal, but their system was declared currently unconstitutional in terms of school funding. We think a lawsuit at this juncture helps a narrative, shaping the discussion going into the continued work on the interim study, even if nothing takes place or if only preliminary proceedings take place and some discovery, right? These lawsuits are long, they take time. There is a good chance there will be another legislative session in the interim if you wait until the committee finishes its work. If you wait until a legislative session is done and you start then, you just essentially restart that clock again, waiting out another 2 years. And so it's actually a good period, both from, we think, an advocacy standpoint, and also it makes just sense in terms of timing at this time. I just threw a lot of information at you, and so what questions do you have for me?
Any questions from a trustee? Any question from anybody, really? Trustee Davy.
I know you said, now is the time, but what in general is the timeline you're looking at for kind of the next 12 months, ideally?
I think any lawsuit would be filed before the end of the year. I think I'll speak in broad generalities here, in any given lawsuit, you're likely to face some kind of initial opposition that, questions whether you can even move forward with it. I think you get sort of those preliminary pieces out of the way. I think you can start having a much more sort of, the next stage in litigation is you go into what's called discovery, and you do you have the ability to depose people, meaning you can ask people questions, you can do requests for production and get documents, you can seek specific information, right? You can see a lot of that preliminary matters playing out. I would guess that nothing would happen from a substantive standpoint, because by time any litigation that relies on a legislative session is likely to find itself stalled out come November of next year. And potentially in holding pattern, just waiting out the legislature. Even the last time that the system was declared unconstitutional, there was either a pause period for a special session or for a legislative session to come in and attempt to essentially make corrections. And I know in Helen Elementary that happened as well. The Supreme Court came in and moved deadlines. So it's long, and the litigation process can be slow in anything.
Trustee Walsh.
My question is, for us, do we get to vote and discuss tonight? Oh, thank goodness, great.
If we decided to join this, What is the workload going to be like for our administrative team to produce evidence for you?
I think generally what we would be looking for is to work directly with your superintendent to come up with specific categories of information related to the factors that I went through. It may not be all of those for Missoula specifically, right? It might be specific pieces, and then working with the superintendent to identify who the specific people are, whether we're working directly with them. It's not going to be insignificant, but right, we would try to, I think, figure out a way to basically spread that information. Right? We want to talk to your business or your finance directors, right, facilities folks. We're going to want to hear if there are specific teacher pieces we should be talking about, right? So we'd basically be going through a set of criteria. But yeah, Micah would probably bear a significant amount of like back and forth until we figure out that piece. Ultimately, to present that information would usually be in the form historically of almost like declarations, sort of multi-page affidavits. And then if and when any of these cases go to trial, usually it's superintendents historically that have offered testimony along with experts.
Trustee Witcher, then Vice Chair Walker Andrews.
What other school districts have signed on?
As of today, none.
What other school districts have you approached?
We have spoken with Alberton, Bozeman, Billings, Helena. We've had sort of conversations that didn't rise to the board level, but we've probably reached out, I would say, district-wise to, I would guess it's north of 20 to 25 districts, but not on the same level of necessarily getting to a board decision. We've talked to Eureka, Evergreen, we've reached out to Arlee, sorry, I'm riffing off the top of my head here. A bit of the work preceded me. Elder Grove. That's what's coming to my head right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the 8 different categories, and it's probably too soon to tell us this, but if you were pursuing it, would you then say take the sort of top 4 that seem the most egregious, or would you go after all 8 of those categories, or how would that work?
I mean, I think there would be, if the arguments can be made in every category, I think you would go after every category. For a couple of reasons. One, it looks like most of them there are problems, but also because after Columbia Falls, after the legislature made a number of changes and had a session to put sort of more money into the funding pot, the original litigants in Columbia Falls came back to the district court and said, still not good enough, right? But now we have a statute, now we've got a Supreme Court opinion, we've got your original opinion, Judge Sherlock. This system is still broken. And maybe it was too soon, maybe there were other factors involved, but Judge Sherlock walked through all the factors and found progress had been made with regard to qualified staff. The quality educator payment had come into place, right? Money had been, there were one-time only payments. The court back then gave credit just for the state doing a facilities study and putting a minimum money in a pot for some major capital improvements, right? And the court looked at one-time only money and ongoing money and said, I'm not prepared to say that the state hasn't essentially made a good faith effort to try to fix this problem. But in doing so, the court identified areas where the state appeared to still be deficient in areas where the judge was going to give credit and kind of shook it all up and just said marginally constitutional. So I think you would want to go for every single category because that was the prior practice.
Trustee Walsh?
Just a couple questions. This is at no financial cost to us, just sweat equity of our superintendent?
That's correct.
And also, do you think some of these other districts are waiting for us to get in the game, are waiting for Missoula to sign on, and then they'll sign on?
I think there is, I've used a bad analogy of like a middle school dance, sort of waiting for somebody to hit the dance floor and get everybody else out there. Yes, I think it would be of great assistance for somebody like Missoula to step in and say, we can take the lead on this.
Well, I think it shouldn't be that we need a lawsuit to get our legislature to do the right thing, but it seems like this is the critical pressure that we need, and it's well-timed. 2027 legislative session is around the corner. I don't know, I think it's the right move.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take a full board motion. Comments are after the motion, if you have a
Okay.
question.
This is a question. Yeah, mine is too.
Go, or you can ask your question, and if Mr. Holliday can't answer, we'll look to our superintendent. Our trustee Walsh?
I guess my question is for Micah. What are your worries? Do you have worries about that? I think that would be important for us to consider.
Some of my worry is of the unknown. I think at the end of the day, it would be hard for me to sit here, having served as a superintendent for 6 years, and say that we should just sit back and let the usual happen. That would be I think there's an opportunity to stand up on behalf of public education in Montana. This is critical for our students. It's critical for our future as a state. It's critical for our staff. And it's hard for me to see a downside. I mean, I don't know that you can go anywhere but up.
Trustee Witcher, then trustee Davy.
And first of all, I really respect that answer a lot because I know that it directly relates to your workload, and Denise's workload and y'all's workload. So I respect that answer a lot. It's hard when it already seems so overwhelming. But what does Bea say? What does our legal counsel say?
Our conversation, and she was here when we were discussing it, was she didn't have hesitations or worries about it. And I don't know if there were any further conversations with Upper 7 and Bea or not, but.
No, I think the last time I spoke with Bea was with you all.
Trustee Davy, then Vice Chair Walker Andrews.
Okay. If we decide to be those first middle schoolers out on the dance floor, are we prepared to be like, heck yeah, we are rocking this, like we are awesome, and have a really solid comms plan, or are we gonna like slink our way out onto the floor?
I can do the Roger Rabbit. just kidding. No, I think it's it's an all-in moment.
I think as trustees as well, when we have our budget meetings and we have people sending in public comment and teachers asking us for help and why certain things are certain ways, I think this is one way we could tell them, look what we're doing. We're here trying to advocate so that so we don't have to cut art or, X, Y, and Z. So I think this is definitely, I know I can't do the Roger Rabbit, I can do the Running Man. All right, okay, enough. Vice Chair Walker Andrews.
Well, my husband's old enough that he wouldn't slink, he'd stroll. But my question, actually, I like the local control piece because I do think as you just said, people come here and they wonder, why did you cut this position, or why aren't you doing X? And that we're supposed to be in charge, but you can't be in charge if you don't have but $1.98 for a $2 or $5 item. But I do worry a little bit, and you can probably answer this, given today's federal politics, one worries a little bit about whether joining a lawsuit will suddenly be met with, well, then we'll just take away from everything. You know, the retaliation part worries me a little.
Yeah. Trying to not get too much into the politics of the world today, right? Like, I would be remiss if I didn't say, right, the rules of what we all understood 10 months ago don't feel exactly the same anymore, or those rules don't seem to apply in the same ways. You're protected from retaliation. If they can't take away Missoula's money, right? So if the question is, like, is the response going to be, we're not going to fund anybody's education, right? Like that would then, that would walk directly into, right, a judicial determination of an unconstitutional act by the legislature. I guess it would be foolish, right, as someone who worked for the state of Montana for approximately 15 years before this current hat I'm wearing, for an agency to say, you know, somebody has sued over this specific legal question, so we are going to retaliate against them. It opens them up to significant problems. We file a significant number of cases against the state of Montana, or at least the lion's share of the cases we file are against the state of Montana. I don't know if I can think of one where somebody faced, and many of them are individuals, right? I mean, you all are acting as an entity. I don't know if I can think of one where the litigant faced direct retaliation for doing that.
Trustee Walsh.
Watching the interim study meetings, I almost think instead of inciting retaliation, would you agree, I almost think this would provide cover for a lot of those legislators that would like to do right by the system, but it's not maybe the right climate. And watching how they vote and watching how they discuss, I think this would provide shelter for them to make some different decisions. What are your thoughts on that?
One would hope. If it was about 20 years ago when the first, or when Columbia Falls was decided, during subsequent legislative education committee hearings where they were actually discussing potential changes and funding, and they actually had the plaintiffs' counsel in the room, and they were asking questions about whether or not, right, whether we pass this piece of legislation or amend it in this way would actually comply with the court's decision, right? I don't know, right? I wouldn't tell you that's going to be the sense of cooperation, but that would be, right, that would be aspirational. It'd be fantastic if people could say, look, we've got this problem here and this is hanging over our heads, and let's make them go away, right? That's a piece I didn't really talk about it, but that's in the wake of Helena School District. Back in the 80s, there were a couple of other lawsuits. Those were mooted because as soon as the state saw what was being claimed as the problems, it made some statutory tweaks. Did it solve the education and funding problems in the state? No, but it mooted, right, in the legal sense, defeated those claims and knocked them out of court. And if we came in, right, if Missoula came in and said, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, and they said, haha, we're going to stop your lawsuit by, you know, fixing and funding all of those things, then, you know, you guys can pat yourselves on the back for a job well done.
Any other questions before I take Vice Chair Garris.
You're not asking for money from us, but who is funding you?
So we are self-funded in the sense that we work off of donations. We have some larger funders. Sometimes on specific lawsuits, we fundraise and get funding for our expert services or other pieces. I think I said this last time, you're free to look at our 990, and you can see our funding on there. We're nonprofit. I'm salaried, but lots of small donors, some larger donors.
Any final questions? Seeing none, I'll take it's a full board motion. Is there a motion to join Upper 7 Law? Moved by Trustee Walsh, second by Trustee Witcher. Now we'll take some final comments. Any final comments from a trustee? Trustee Mercer.
As a state employee, I'm going to abstain.
Any? Trustee Walsh.
Well, I just think as a district, it seems like we are being as responsible as we can, stretching every dollar that we can with our facility study. We are looking to the future, trying to position ourselves that we don't have to go out for all these big bonds that Helena just did. We realize that we can't keep putting a burden on our taxpayers. The state has heaps of money, more money than they've ever had before, and I just think this is the responsible move that we can make that's both good for the taxpayers of Missoula and public education in Montana.
Trustee Witcher.
Echoing what Trustee Walsh said, if the state is operating at a surplus and we're barely scrapping by and our options locally continue to diminish, I want to be able to tell the teachers, the kids, the parents of this district that we've done everything we can, and I think checking this box includes doing everything that we can.
Any other comments, final comments? Vice Chair Garris.
I would just say, it feels like on the surface, it's a no-brainer. I'm not super comfortable with not having a clear list of who is donating and backing you, because when we sign on with you, we're married to that. And in politics, it gets ugly. So if anybody wants to hear a downside, it's if there's a donor that could be exploited, that's something that we're going to have to live with as soon as we vote yes for this. So the flip side of that is maybe that's a small risk to take for a larger gain for us. So.
Any other final comments? I have one. I think this is a great opportunity for Missoula County Public Schools, especially when it comes to our budgets and where we couldn't do what we wanted to do, or when we had parents in here asking us about different things. I think this is one way we can show our community that we're listening to them, and so I'm in favor of this. So now we'll just move on to public comments. Is there any public comment?
Yes, Scott Shook.
Scott, can you sit on this one over here? You're fine there, Andre.
All right, thank you. Hello, everybody. I want to thank you for that amazing presentation, and I want to thank you for all the comments that I heard in support of this. MEA and MFPE have been lobbying the interim funding commission throughout the whole experience. Their roadshow might be over, but they're going to be at the educator conference. I'm not sure who exactly is going to show up, but they've got a session, and I think that at least some of that's going to be a dialogue. Now, that said, history shows me that we have little faith in the interim commission and the decennial study actually getting any results. So therefore, representing MEA, and I think I can speak for MFPE too, we support this. We support you getting behind this, and we support you being first in line, because I think others will follow. Because 10 years ago, the decennial study made some great recommendations that the legislature ignored. and it needed a lawsuit to fix things. We're going to need a lawsuit again to fix things if history shows us anything. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, we have any abstentions? One abstention. All those in favor for approving the recommendation, the motion on the table, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all the other trustees present. Looking forward to working with you. The time is now 7:20 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.